Hello everyone and welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Ads Lyson. Before we start today's podcast, if you're looking for surfing and outdoor gear, look no further. Go to Northcore on the internet and use the discount code, capital letters, GrumpySurfer15 to receive 15% off your purchase. Northcore are one of the leading surfing hardware brands in my eyes for the quality of product they create, so don't miss out. Also, before we start, the WaveKey guys have given us a discount code. So if you want 10% off your WaveKey subscription, use the code, capital letters, one word, WaveKeyGrump to receive 10% off your subscription. And this is valid until the 1st of July 2021. So if you want 10% off your WaveKey subscription, use the code, capital letters, WaveKeyGrump to receive 10% off your subscription. My guest today grew up with one of the surfing world's most famous icons as a father, the great Nat Young. He and his siblings were all riding waves long before they could actually swim. The ocean and the beach were definitely a way of life for his whole family. Following in his father's footsteps, my guest became a Longboard World Champion in 2000 and then again in 2003, beating Joel Tudor on both occasions. Then in 2003 decided to retire from professional surfing and pursue a music career, which his debut album Waves of Change reached number 10 in the Australian music chart. After his second album in 2008, One Step at a Time, he decided to focus on his free surfing and surfboard shaping career, which is what he's doing today. So please enjoy my conversation with the great Beau Young.
Yeah, I'm good. I had a day of running around with surfboards pretty much, but we had pretty big floods here, like you've probably seen in the news. And not long ago we had fires and my dad lost his bloody farmhouse, and so it's been a bit wild, but good old Australia, we always seem to peak with the global warming stuff a bit.
It's crazy, isn't it? I remember watching the big fires in America as well a few years ago that just decimated Northern California pretty much. It's a pretty rad time, that, like.
Full on. Yeah. 2 days ago there were houses going down streets and all sorts over here, but it is what it is. Hopefully it all comes back to people using green energy, ideally. At least in the UK, I mean, I know it's nothing compared to the military and flying to the moon, but at least the UK, it's on the radar, which is awesome.
But the thing is, though, it's changing people's mindsets, isn't it, really? And trying to change people's minds to get away from plastics and, you know, fossil fuels and all that sort of thing to stop all the ozone layer breaking down and stuff. It's quite difficult, and it's all to do, unfortunately, it's all to do with wealth as well.
It's hard not to get into politics these days, but our guy here is definitely getting a few kickbacks when it comes to the old fossil fuels.
Where are you at the moment, and have you been surfing today?
Yes, I'm on a little 10-acre property. I guess you'd call it a hobby farm, just inland of a place called Brunswick Heads on the far north coast of New South Wales. Most people know where Byron Bay is. I'm about 25 minutes north of there. Thankfully, just out of that bubble, I just go in there to have a quick surf and get out these days because it's like a little city. But and I like the countryside. So, and yeah, I was up early and had a quick surf, a little bit higher tide, but I mean it was really nice in surprisingly blue water after all the floods we've had. And yeah, just thankful to do it any chance I can get, really. Always been that way. Any chance.
I've seen a couple of little edits that have been thrown up over the last week or so. You were surfing like a little leg, and there was some really nice little barrel footage that was on there.
Yeah. There's surprisingly little corners you can still find without the populace. Actually, that particular wave, it's literally 12 minutes from my house, and it can honestly get like small Porto Escondido, like really beautiful beach break, quite round and hollow. Pretty special, I feel really lucky that I can still find. It's a really, really long beach, so you can always find a wave to yourself pretty much. And having just come from 5 months in the UK, I like that about over there as well. It seems like you have enough spots that you can always find a little corner, which I think if that remains in surfing, it's pretty great, because there's so many surfers now, and obviously the population of the world's not going down. But for most of us surfers, it's the place we can go to find ourselves, be it with a couple of friends or individually to bring that to land and communicate one surfer to another, or to people that haven't surfed. Hopefully, it makes us better people. I think that's probably what that ionization and going under a few waves gives you. Ideally, ultimately, I think if we can still find that, then.
Do you find yourself doing that a lot more now? Is trying to find those places where there aren't so many crowds about. I mean, I'm a typical example of. I'm quite sort of like not a soulful. That's the wrong word. I'm quite an individual person, and I like my own space. So even if it's quite difficult where I surf around here in North Devon, because a lot of the good breaks are really, really popular. But when I do find I go out and there are crowds there, which the majority of the time they are, I'm always like trying to find those little holes where people aren't sitting and trying to get away. Do you see yourself just trying to get away from that more and more now?
Yeah, I mean, I feel as though I've been that from my very early 20s. I've always found that aspect of surfing, where I don't know what it does. But, there's so many ways you can take it as a sport or a communion with nature is the way I love to look at it. It's beyond me, like just how much it can give. And I'm completely with you. From my early 20s, I think I've been quite happy to surf, as the legendary surfer George Greeno says, to surf the B grade waves or the C grade waves or the D grade waves. It's the act of doing it, that I mean, how many things can you do in life these days for free? Like, let's be honest, to catch a form of energy that's come from so far out at sea and surf and ride and glide on that thing, it's just still beyond me. It really is. So yeah, I'm with you. I tend not to surf any of the really well-known waves, and and if I do, it's when they're barely surfable for most people. I mean, I'll jump on a longboard when it's half a foot, and for example, Kira, which is only, I don't know, 40 minutes up the road, really. Like, you won't catch me there if it's 5 to 6 foot. I'll be surfing an empty beach break where you can find a secluded peak to yourself. But if I know that Kira is going to be half a foot, where your average surfer wouldn't even bother, I'm out there with bells on.
For me, I don't really have that fortune of. I live basically about an hour away from everywhere. So where you were here in the UK when you were down in Wembury,
yeah,
I live about an hour away from there. So, an hour in the grand scheme of things, if you look at the size of Australia, America, or like, the big continents, it's not really that great.
I know.
But it's quite admin to get there, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of a little bit the opposite, where I'm looking at the forecast. So I'm always looking at the swells and the swell direction and the wind direction and the tides. And I try and make those decisions to go when it's good to try and find the spots that people wouldn't necessarily make the effort to go to, but it's still going to be good. But it's quite difficult, sometimes.
Yeah, I definitely, I don't go to the worst waves. I definitely try and source out, even if it's on the same stretch of beach, I try and find a similar wave that might be as great, but you're still getting the wave somewhat, But I mean, I remember when I was living on my father's farm in my mid-20s, basically an hour inland of the sea. I'd wake up early. I mean, obviously petrol prices and stuff have all changed now, but I'd drive an hour to the beach early and surf relatively, well, basically very quiet waves, and then drive back every day. And I never, it didn't bother me, because I just, it's like, I've definitely got my vices, coffee being one of them. And surfing's so much stronger than that. It's so much more addictive. Like I can kick any habit, but catching a few waves, I cannot, and I will not. Like, you know, if I was to lose limbs, I would still, you know, those people that have been through such incredible things and still find the ocean at the other end. You know, a friend of mine's partner in Sydney, they've just done a Hollywood movie on her, and she's like adaptive surfing champion. Just like, I don't know, against all odds, really. You know, to you never lose that sensation. You know, be it prone, standing, on your knees. It's just that contact. You know.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were talking about before, about just being in the ocean. And I've talked about this before on the podcast. I read a book about a year ago called The Blue Mind, and it was talking about how, as human beings, you're drawn to the ocean. Why we set up coastal towns. You know, we've got naval ports, fisheries, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, using Australia as an example of that, most of your towns and cities are not inland. They're all on the coastal areas, and it's talking about why people are drawn to it. When you go on holiday, people want to go by a swimming pool or down to the sea, and you know, subconsciously maybe they're just thinking the water is a place for getting away. Whether it's like you say, going into the sea or even going into a swimming pool, just to have that water moving over your ocean somehow is like the therapeutic thing. So when you have people that have issues, you know, whether they've lost limbs or they're born with it or they have any sort of mental issues, it's always like a calming thing for them. And I think that's, you know, a really kind of good way of looking at things.
Yeah, I've only done it a few times. I want to do it more, but working with the Disabled Surfing Association, it's just like the best, like to be there with them. Because, you know, obviously you're also in the water. It can take a few of you to hold one of them on a board, and you kind of have to, you kind of, you basically go tandem with them quite often due to their, you know, their abilities. And it's just to see their smile, you know, and just, yeah, I mean, it's a funny one. Like as surfers, we want less people doing it, but you know, for a lot of us, it's how we make our living, and it's also just, when would you ever deny any other human, animal, what have you, from being able to experience what we get to experience? Like, it's the kind of thing shout it from the rooftops. You know, surfing's life changing.
Definitely a good point of view on it. Going back to what you were talking about before, so you know, can you just explain a little bit what you were doing here in the UK? Because you were here for what 4 or 5 months, and you were here with your daughter as well, weren't you?
I was, yeah. So my partner Sam and I, we split just when COVID was really starting. So Sam and Ava, they went back to the UK. Obviously, Sam not long out of pregnancy wanted to be near a family. And, you know, we just had bushfires here. There was so many things going on at once. It was crazy time period, really. And my aim was always to get to the UK as soon as I could to see Ava. You know, I never want to miss a birthday. All my life, I wanted to be a parent, and being a dad is like, you know, that whole only a surfer knows a feeling. It's kind of like only a parent, like it's beyond me. Like I saw that you were talking to Ben the other week. And you know, he's a great dad, and Lucas is doing awesome. And I just, it's like for example, being on this property, like I still can't believe I'm here, because I just feel like I just don't know how the heck I'm here, because I'm in love with this little farm. I get to shape here. I live in a barn. Life's pretty cruisy, you know. But whenever I see Ava, it's like that thing. Like I just can, like it's beyond my comprehension that I've got a beautiful little girl, and I got to, you know, such a pivotal time, like between 18 months and 2 years old, where she's starting to formulate little sentences. She's like a little mimic, you know. You say a word and she does her best to repeat it. Just way cuter, you know, and it's just the best thing ever. Like I didn't know, you know, being 46 now, I didn't realize I was going to get to be a dad. And I'm just so thankful. Like, I'll be in the UK for sure every year for 6 months. And we'll see what happens with Sam and I. Like, you never know, never discount anything. But yeah, that's the situation right now. And, you know, like, I'll be talking to Ava after we speak now. She wants to tell her dada she loves me every day by FaceTime. I'm not with her, which for me is just, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I'm a parent.
Mate, you're turning the heartstrings in my chest, because I'm very similar. Even though, you know, I'm not, you know, like you in Australia and your kids elsewhere, but, you know, being in the military, a lot of the time you're away, or you're traveling, or, you know, you're doing something away from your home base.
Yeah.
And, you know, even for me, I live an hour away from where I work.
Yeah.
Occasionally I stay here every now and again. And even though I'm, you know, not that far away, my missus is sending me texts of picking the kids up from school and stuff, and I'm not at home.
Yeah.
And it just makes me like, oh, I just drive home. But it's like, you can feel that, what's the word? It's like a magnet, isn't it? It's like you can feel it pulling you. So, you know, you must be the same after you get off the phone to your daughter. You're like, oh, you can feel that. It's really hard to explain. I can't put it into words. I'm not very good with words anyway, but
Yeah.
I feel you big time.
Yeah. I just, especially when it was like, you know, being an older parent, just not realizing it was, not thinking for some time it was going to happen. And then just to, you know, it's a big part of us, isn't it? Our children, like, it's just like the next phase of our being is in them. So it's like so cool. And, you know, just trying, you know, through generational, just trying to be, I mean, my parents are amazing, but trying to do your best as a parent and instill the right, you know, the right thinking with your child and all those things. It's awesome.
Talking about your parents, can we just talk a little bit about, you know, where you grew up, how you grew up? Because your dad is probably one of the most influential people, one of the influential people within the whole of the surfing world. Can you just explain, like, you know, what it was like growing up and where you grew up?
So I grew up, I was born at my father's farm, inland from the coast, as I was saying, about an hour, country, big property, mountainous, a lot of trees. They were still building. We were living in a tent for the first 6 months or so until the place was built. And that's why it's so sad that it went with the bushfires. There's a lot of history there. It's just like a giant hippie palace in the middle of nowhere, basically. Yeah, mum and dad couldn't make their relationship work. They're both from Sydney. So when I was a couple of years old, and my sister as well, we moved back to Sydney. Basically grew up in Sydney with my mum mainly. And then my dad and my stepmom, they went north to Angari and that area. And as soon as my schooling was done, I headed straight north, really. That's why I'm here now. I just, you know, obviously growing up with my dad being the way he is, like I knew of Morning of the Earth and that country soul feeling of the early to mid 70s that my dad and a group of his friends all went through. Always was a big draw card for me, you know, living on the land, growing your own food. And yeah, I never really, like, it's funny, like, there's two sides to my dad for me. Obviously there's the father side. You know, he's like one of my best friends, always has been. And then the other side is the surf star, I guess, like the guy that, with a couple of his other friends, turned the history of surfing on its head. You know, it's still my favorite longboard surfing ever by any individual. And this is seeing my dad not as his son. This is seeing him as someone that loves surfing and studies the intricacies and things like that. The surfing of my dad in 1966 was so much more than trailblazing. Like, I've never seen longboarding like it, where you stamp on that tail and the board stops on the spot, and then you hanging 10 in the hook, and they call it the involvement period for a reason, but it's like where you are completely immersed in the pocket, and you don't stray from the pocket, and everything's about that power source. My dad's surfing that time just exemplified that. And then obviously my dad with Greeno and Bob McTavish, they pretty amazing trio, did some incredible things. Like I love Uncle George, and he's all of our uncles. He's always there to talk to people about, he'll just talk your ear off about theories and hydrodynamics and why he made this hull a certain way and different aspects. And he really breaks things down. He's a genius for sure. And like and then obviously the revival of the longboard thing, my dad was a big part of that in the late 80s, early 90s. Some of the single fins he was riding, mid 70s, incredible. Surfing always, the pintail surfing, where it was basically the same short, tight arcs that he was doing on a longboard, but on a 6/8 pintail. Hand-shaped, hand-foil fin. I'm saying hand-shaped doesn't mean off a computer plug. It means a block of foam, plain as rasps. Incredible. And that's why I still hand-shape quite a few boards today. I don't want to lose that art because I think it's just important, if kids can learn that. Like, I've got a friend that's been wanting to come out and hand shape a longboard for weeks now, and got to have him out because it's a process of elimination. Got the blank, whittle it to thickness, draw your outline on, and then blah, blah, blah. Kick your curves in, blah, blah, blah. There's just so many layers to it, and it's so much more work. But for me, the best boards I've had personally have been full hand shapes. Something about that. I get incredible pre-shapes too, but there's something about the handshake ones for me that work.
What are your thoughts on the new technologies that are coming through? So, you touched on a little bit where some of the blanks are machine shaped and then sanded down and then laminated and resined and stuff just to finish them off. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Are you against it, or are you just thinking that it's maybe just the evolvement of where surfing's going?
I'm not against anything, honestly. Like, I had a few waves on Ben's board at St Agnes, I don't know, 2.5 months ago, and it just locked in insane on the nose. It was awesome. No, I've never had any issues with. We're talking now on technology, and I'm hopeless with tech, but I think there's room for all kinds of. I think it's the same as my thinking with surfcraft. It has been for such a long time now. Before it was the done thing, I always thought there was room for a steveless fish, or a funny looking board called a wombat that was a combination of Wayne Lynch's, Ted Spencer's style of boards from the early 70s. Like, I think there's room for everything, and I think that the general surfing population are onto that now, and it's great because we're all unique, we're all individual, and I think the technology is cool, really cool. For me, the biggest one is environmental technology. I think that obviously flax and compostable surfboard blanks, things like that, are probably at the top of the list. I think that's and I think that takes people with money to throw at it, who really want to do the right thing, and not just throwing it out as a greenwash. I don't really think that's the greatest, just to say, this is environmental when it's really no different from something else. I don't think that's ethical. But I do think that there is room for companies that really want to champion that. And in the same breath, I do my high-end boards, and I work with a company here in Australia who do cheaper boards. I like bringing it back to the whole every surfer deserves to, everyone deserves to surf. It's like not everyone can afford one of my boards, but they can get a cheaper alternative and have just as much fun. And so I feel that way about technology, about the price of boards, all those things. I just think there's room for everyone. And but I think, I think the biggest one would be major environmental changes within surfboards. I think that's long overdue. And obviously the exterior is a massive one, like to create a really hard shell like that and not use toxins in the process. I don't know how that's doable. Obviously there's layers and things like that, but you want form and function. For me, like, I would like to ride what I ride, but knowing that it's not a complete landfill nightmare.
When you're talking about consumerism, and if we just use food for an example, to eat healthy is really quite expensive, which is counterproductive in my opinion. Why is the healthy stuff more expensive than buying a bag of frozen chips or fries or, chicken nuggets or something like that that's mass produced?
Yeah.
Surely having, fresh vegetables that come from a local farm. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. When you've got big cities like London or Exeter or Sydney or places like that, it is quite difficult because you're talking about mass farming then, and it's not consumer savvy. But trying to change that to make the more healthy stuff more user friendly by having it a little bit cheaper would change people's lives a little bit more. And when you're talking about surfboards and making them more, landfill friendly, and if they do snap, which inevitably boards do break and people get rid of them, they can decompose in a certain way. It's really difficult to try and find the fine line with it. And I know a few people that are trying to evolve eco-friendly boards here in the UK as well. And it's kind of like a sticking point, isn't it, really? Because, the surfer's lifestyle is all about the environment. However, the thing that you ride in the ocean, it couldn't be anything further from the truth, right?
Isn't it crazy? I know. And I mean, we're having this great chat about entering an incredible natural domain. And then after I've been lucky to do that, I put on my Tyvek suit and my full face mask. I shave with gloves on because I don't want to be having it go through my pores, all those aspects. And it, as Wayne Lynch said, it's a toxic industry. And, Lord knows there's enough really, really highly wealthy surfers these days that have made their billions or hundreds of millions from surfing. And they're in a position to give back to all of us, not just us, the sea, obviously. Because, I mean, we'll buy them if they're making them. And if it's protocol, just like, the UK and what the plan is in the future with cars much earlier than Australia, because we live in such a gorgeous country, but our politicians are so in the dark ages. It's saddening. And you would assume within surfing that there would have been people throwing a ton of money at this, and it would become statutory.
Let's bring the conversation level up a bit because it's going quite into a morbid situation here, I think. What sort of boards are you riding at the moment, and what are like your favourite designs that you've ridden in the past?
Yeah, so I've got a little board called the Pod, and it's a 5'8". You'd call it an egg, I guess. It has a deep single concave to a slight double concave, and it's got these really large, quite raked, highly flexible fins. And I was always of the Mark Richards, quite straight up, not much flex in the fin. I always loved twin fins like that. But then I got on this thing, And my dad always used to talk about the loading up of the fin principle. So if you've imagined two highly flexible, large twin fins with all that speed from the concave on a very wide, short machine, you generate with not a lot of a rocker, you're generating immense speed quick. And come off the bottom and they're not splayed, there's no angle, so they're vertically upright, so you have immediate engagement through your turn, but then you've got the kick and the twang of that flex, so you just on, like, and that revolutionized my whole, like, that completely re-sparked my love of surfing, that little board. So I like that thing because you know what you want to do, but you know at the same time you got to hang on, which is really cool, you know. Even through the flats, like you're on, and it's quite it's a very knifey down rail, like it's super 70s kind of, you know, that kind of thing. So you've essentially got a third fin there on the rail every time you go rail to rail, because it's not round, it's not forgiving, it's just bitey, you know. So I'm loving the pod, or the official name of the Podler diet. And then, which for no apparent reason, really. And then what else am I loving? I'm loving, so I've got a pendulum model, which is basically my ode to Donald Takayama. And, you know, God rest his soul, like Diane Takayama, pretty sure she knows I'm making them anyway, but she'd be over the moon. So, but basically from having ridden a Model T a lot, I really like aspects of it, but I also, and Ben's done it a bit in his board, is the beveled rail, beveling that nose and having a deep concave. So you've got all these cornices that are basically, if you're in a hollow 2-foot bowl, you've got all these things that are just locking you in. If you're willing, it's a bit like the pod as a shortboard, but as a longboard, if you're willing to hang with that at max speed, it's not going to give out on you, especially if you've got an 11.5-inch rounded D fin. It's not coming out, you know. So it's just like you got to be ready to lock in. And then also the other aspect I like of a D fin is the vertical uprightness, where it's just like, I guess, just like the way those the fins in the pod are immediate engagement. When you've got a big ass fin that is really quite upright, it reacts to how your body's reacting. Yeah, so they're probably my two favourites right now.
The resurgence of what you would call retro boards, but they're not really, because everything in life is in cycles, isn't it? And twin fins and mid lengths, they're all coming back. They never really went away.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had a Jednol 20, a little 5/8 thing that is, yeah, and it absolutely flies. But it's like you were saying, it's really, really flat. And I whacked a couple of, just mega randomly. I never changed the fin setup. The fins that I got with it, you know, stayed the same for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I whacked some Mark Richards FCS fins in. So they're really big fins, and they're quite tall. And the drive it gave it, I was like that, oh my God, and the speed. And it's almost like, and I never really thought about it before until I started doing these podcasts and talking to different people and shapers. Fins are almost another surfboard within a surfboard, and it's amazing how much it can change by just altering that setup. It's crazy.
Yeah, they're just as important as the board, without a doubt. Like coming back to those MR fins, gee, the guy just nailed it with that one template, didn't he? Like just hit it out of the park.
Yeah, and it's like evolutionized everything, and like I say, it comes in circles. It really hasn't really gone away at all. It's still been on the underlayer of everything. You know, when you've got the emergence of the sort of like the shorter, thinner railed, thinner boards that came out in the 90s, you know, with Slater and all them guys surfing them toothpicks that really weren't fit for purpose. It was just kind of like the fashion at the time.
Yeah.
Everything's gone full circle now, and you've got people, Gabriel Medina, for instance. I listened to an interview with him, and he was saying that he surfs with loads more volume. It's just hidden within the board shape itself, and you look at what he's riding. No way, but it's like it's almost like a 30-litre board that he's riding, and you're like, this sort of stuff hasn't gone away. Like I was saying, it's always been there. And I think people are starting to realize that a little bit more with social media and, the ability to search for different things and listen to things like this, me talking to you and you talking about board shapes and stuff. I think that's just revolutionizing surfing, if you want to call it a sport as such.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the things those guys do in the air, it's like you've got to have a little bit of tail width in there to get the projection to do that. Obviously, they've got incredible technique and obviously, like your Italos, Gabriels, whoever else, but also even just widening those tails of hair and whatnot. I think that definitely is amplifying what they're doing, as well. Obviously they're like springs anyway, but any edge they can get.
Let's talk a little bit about your competitive career, because without going through loads and loads of details, you won the World Longboarding Tour, didn't you, in 2000 and 2003?
Yeah.
You got into, I think it's kind of I keep talking about evolution, and an involvement of your surfing is, naturally to go into competing. Anyone that loves it will try something like that. Have you always had a competitive spirit to do that, or did you just kind of fall into it?
I think, like my dad, when I was early teens, he'd have pro surfers that were in town, going to the Coke Classic or whatever they were doing. I mean, I was always inspired by the beautiful surfing of Tom Curran or whoever it may be. And growing up in Sydney, there was Martin Potter, Barton Lynch, Tom Carroll. The list goes on, really, at that point in time down there. I was just always, I think it's like anything, like if you truly love it, you just want to better yourself at it, be it guitar, staying fit, whatever it may be, you want to better yourself. And I didn't really know there was another option. There wasn't another option, really. Like, if you're going to try and make a living out of surfing, which still to this day is kind of ridiculous, really. There's so many surfers on the planet. I think it all stems from that love of it. And then when you fall in love with it, you, like, at a personal level, I always wanted to get better. And, for example, ping pong, like myself and Joel Tudor, for example, like major battles on the ping pong table, just purely because it's just trying to, I like that aspect where you're trying to really break stuff down. And on a longboard, it's footwork. It's all about positioning. Same with a ping pong bat and ball. It's about getting your angles and doing things to extreme. And also there's that element where you're growing through it and you're like, I don't even know if I could ever really surf like that. But then you go out when it's horrible, and you go out when it's really good, and you just keep going out, and you never not go out. Unbeknownst to you, you're becoming more attached to nature at the same time, which is the cool aspect of surfing, because it was like by the time I just achieved that thing that it's like, oh shit, it'd be amazing to do that. Not ever thinking I would achieve the competitive, goal. But when I did, I was already kind of done. Like the second time I quit before that last event, I told my sponsors, I'm done. I don't care if I come 9th or 1st. I never want to paddle out in another heat for money ever again against good close friends. That's not surfing to me, and I don't want to do it. But it took, the only way I was making a living was by doing that initially. And then it was cool that avenues opened up for people to be able to surf free, on what they wanted. Like, if I want to drop down to my knees and get a kneeboard barrel, that's cool, but you're not going to get scored, are you? And being scored is a certain thing, and you have a criteria and you have boxes to tick, It's like even seeing Ben Skinner the other day, I'm like, mate, you should win a whole bunch of world titles. But it's not the be all and end all, you know. Everyone knows how you surf. That's just it's a thing. It's like the more joy you're getting from that, the better it comes as well. It's an interesting like juxtaposition. It's like, sure, you put in the yards, but through that, if you're not getting the joy, you're not getting the benefit of that coming through anyway. It's kind of interesting. It's an interesting balance, I find. Obviously, some people just go competitor all the way. That's their deal. That's cool. That wasn't ever me. Like it was always a hard one for me, I found.
What was one of your, or did you have any competitive rivalries? Did you find, that you were always like, I want to beat that guy regardless of what happens?
Well, I mean, Joel Tudor and I were best of friends for that period, but we were really close. Kind of different as individuals, really. At the end of the day, as life goes on, it becomes more apparent. But I mean, I still love Joel, and like his surfing gift is just off the charts. But there was always something there because we're kind of almost like brothers, I guess. So it was always a bit that way. And we had a few moments, a few falling outs that went on for years over moves within competition. One of us did, and one of us didn't agree with.
What friend doesn't fall out though?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'd say there was Bonga Perkins and others, but I'd say Joel and I, we had a bit of back and forth there for a bit, for sure.
What were your highlights of your entire time of competing and being on the tour as well? Do you have a couple of ones that stick in mind?
I would say, so the last contest I did was at Raglan in New Zealand, and I think it was Dad's 60th, the night before the final. That sticks in my mind because Dad came over. He knew I wasn't going to do it anymore before that event, but the night before the final, they had a massive. Everyone just came from all the surfers came over for Dad's 60th, and I was trying to sleep downstairs, and it was just chaos. It was chaos upstairs, absolute chaos. Got literally no sleep, and then it was me and Joel in the finals on a left. So I was like, But that was pretty special having Dad there, and being riding a longboard. It's where he began. So to be doing that and to have him there was cool. That was, and also it was cold, windy, really elemental. I mean, that's what I like about the UK is that aspect. It makes you realise I like the elements like that. I think it really takes you there and makes you feel alive. And it being so natural there, like with the howling wind and just the beautiful scenery, it felt kind of like home. So I think that combined with my dad being there and it being the last one I was going to do, and knowing that there was a whole combination of things, like there was the relief of never having to do it again, but also shit, it worked out and could have gone better at the end and all that. So it's just interesting. Yeah, that was nice because it was pretty country as far as the aesthetics of the land, but also the people.
What are your thoughts on looking back now in hindsight? Surfing as a whole is really, I mean, you've got the soulful people and the people that are quite, or almost use it as a religion, and then you've got people that compete and make a living from it. Looking back on how surfing is turning out and changing and has changed over the years, what's kind of your perspective on it now? Do you think competition is a good and healthy thing to promote it, but also the soulful side with all the traveling and stuff? Do you think it bodes well together, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think as individuals, there's got to be some takeaway spiritually, going through waves and swirling around in nature. There's got to be some takeaway of feeling fortunate within our own short lifetime to be able to do such a truly magnificent thing. And I think it really doesn't matter if you want to focus on it competitively or spiritually, I don't think that matters. I think it's just being out there doing it. Like, it doesn't matter if you, like, the competitors are usually just trying to better themselves. You know, they're just trying to better what they're doing, be it personal. I think ultimately it's a personal journey. I don't know what competitors would say, because I'm a bit removed from that. I haven't been one for a long time, but it's more personal achievement. I think within yourself, it's like, shit, I feel like I'm surfing really well within myself, and I think that can be beginner stage. Like, I can't wait till my daughter's like, I just rode a wave for 5 seconds. Like, I hope that occurs, you know, like that would be my everything, you know, because ultimately for me, that would mean she potentially becomes hooked. And I think the takeaway for me is that whether you're a competitor or not, that you take the good out of it, that is what it gives us.
I think holistically, everybody is in their moment. I call it a bubble. They're just stuck doing what they're doing within that bubble at that time. You know, whether a competitor or they're just doing surfing, they're Saturday and Sunday surfers. You know, they're just enjoying doing it. And whatever you're enjoying in that moment is probably what you need to concentrate on a little bit more.
Yeah, me too.
I also think that, you know, talking about a bubble as well, your environmental factors are very important in that as well, because I think everything needs to be lined up. Your mental state, your physical state, even work and family comes into it a little bit as well, because if those aren't all lined up correctly, you know, we talked about surfing earlier about being like a mental health thing as well. It all factors in, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, obviously there's people that are trying to make out like it's more soulful than what it is for them and all that, but whatever, you know. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter as long as I find it interesting because I find it interesting because we can go there no matter what we're going through. So that's what makes it so interesting, that you can go there and it doesn't matter what mood the sea's in either, you know. It's cool. It's pretty bloody special. I find no matter what I'm going through, you can't, it's on a personal side, like I've never once come in and said that hasn't given me good ever, you know, ever, which I find really interesting. And obviously that's outlook. I guess you could come in and say that was a horrible surf and I didn't get any waves, but I think you're taking it the wrong way if you come in like that, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. Perspectives is a beautiful thing, right? Talking about that, so you retired from professional surfing, or, you know, competitive surfing in 2003 after you won that world championships, and you started pursuing a musical career, and you pushed out 2 albums, Waves of Change and One Step at a Time.
Yeah. Well,
Why the change? Why the change of direction from, you know, competitive surfing or surfing as like a main, almost like income, to changing to music?
music was definitely taking me away from wanting to surf competitively. Music's another interesting one because it really, you know, the sound of a chord can take you so many places, and to have a voice that also feels as though it's so many other people's opinions as well. I think picking up the instrument and really starting to write just made it very solid in my mind that I didn't want to compete for it again. And obviously, yeah, within music, there's album sales, there's all that stuff. There's gold records, whatever. It's what you take away from it, like, once again. And the writing process can be highly meditative. Yeah, so that second album, I literally did 1 gig because it was barely a release, you know, to friends in a packed out pub once. That was it. The late nights were really, it's a hard road. You got to be up for it. You're almost, you're living in an alternate space compared to a surfer, to an early riser that does yoga. You're in a different world. Like, you wake up at 11, go to the next venue, do a sound check, maybe see the surf, probably on shore, probably won't go. But I'm still, now more than ever, like I was, you know, Marky LaSalle's, Ben's good friend. Yeah, I'm really close to him, but also close to his brother Sean, and pretty heavily entrenched in music. And we did a fair bit of writing and producing over there. Like I haven't dropped the ball. You know, there's hundreds of songs there, and they're all like little babies. You know, like each one's a little baby. They're so special, so dear. They're their own thing, and production values great to give its own voice and its own life. Yeah, it's just really interesting. Like, it's such an interesting medium. You know, obviously with a band, you're riding a pretty incredible wave for 3.5, 4 minutes, whatever that is. It's a different set on the next track, a different shaped wave coming in. But there's some major similarities between the two wave rides for sure. And I just feel lucky to ride both of the energies, really. Like, I love it. And, you know, it's the same, you know, I know it's pretty full in the UK right now. There's barely any gigs in Australia. But I love nothing more than, you know, going to a festival early and seeing someone on at 1 in the afternoon that they might be called the Voice of Africa, and you're sitting there and there's only 100 other people there, and you're like, fuck, they really are the Voice of Africa. This is astounding. You know, and there's 200 people watching you, like, you know. And, you know, speaking of cathedrals, and like, you're standing in the tent and you're feeling it. Music's powerful, as is the sea.
I think there's so many comparisons you can draw between surfing and music, and I find it quite interesting that you used, from an outsider looking, the way you transitioned from going from being a top-end athlete, competitive surfer, to writing music. There's lots of very similarities, because it's all very much stuck in the moment. You know, it's all about mental space and almost kind of an escapism to a certain extent, because you're thinking about what you're writing or producing music through chords and rhythm and riffs. I don't know whether you ever looked at it that way before, but from my perspective, it's similar, but it's not. But you can see, like, why some people, I mean, like Donovan Frankenritter, for instance, you know, surfer, and he's on the music bandwagon as well. There's so many similarities between his music and the way that he surfs. It's all very rhythmical and flowing, and yeah, I could probably see why you transition from one to the other, if I'm honest.
I find, yeah, the way you put it now, it does make me realise. So obviously, it's like during competitive phase, I do weights and yoga. Like, that was my combo, and it's always like, other people probably aren't doing that combo, but it's all at the end goal. So you've ridden, and not even in the competitive, not even wearing the singlet, just, I caught a wave today, and it's through the time put in that I felt like I truly wasn't in my mind, and I surfed that wave better than I have ever. And when it comes to music, it's like, fuck, just, I've been sitting here for fucking 4 hours playing arpeggio, coming up with lyrics. But it's only when you really get the arpeggiation down that you can feel free enough with guitar for lyrics to go through you, not from you. And you're like, that lyric's not even me. That's beyond me. That those I don't know where those lyrics came, but they're so on point. But that's purely through dedication and love. Same shit, same exact thing, exactly like you're saying. It's kind of being completely on, but being completely away. It's like this weird combination that makes it right. It's really cool. But it's without the yards, you don't truly become free, you know.
But then, you know, if you also think about how music has evolved within surfing as well. So, you know, you've got, back in the day, you know, when we were growing up, I mean, you're six years older than I am. You know, you had all the VHSs and the movies came out, and music was a very poignant piece of movie making, because it made the environmental factor and the feel come out of that movie.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've got a couple of ones that were iconic for me with you in them specifically. You know, you had The End of the Summer with you and your dad driving around with Pat O'Connell and Wingnut, but also, you know, Single Fin Yellow as well.
I mean,
Single Fin Yellow was a very mellow, you know, chilled, longboardy film where, you know, Endless Summer had a bit of everything, you know, a bit of rock, it had a bit of jazz, you know, a bit of hipster stuff in.
Yeah.
And it's all to do with, you know, what we were just talking about there. It's all to do with how the intrinsicness of the music inputted into the visual aspect as well, you know, makes that experience for people too.
It's like when Jason Buffer first sent me Single Fin Yellow, and I saw that White Buffalo was singing on some of my surfing. I was just so floored. Like, you know, Albie Thousand with Morning of the Earth just hit it out of the park for that point in time. And I think, yeah, Jason did an incredible job with that film. Like, it's so true. It's so intrinsic. It's amazing, you know.
I'd like to move on to talk a little bit about like your shaping as well. So have you always shaped through your whole sort of like surfing career per se, or I wouldn't even call it a career because you've been doing it since, you know, it was basically when you were born. You know, has it always been part of your evolution and your involvement in it?
I still find it really challenging. You're just constantly chasing shadows. Like, it's beautiful though. It's such an amazing thing to mold something, to shape it into a craft, and to get all the ideas in your mind onto that block of foam. It's just still blows me out.
I thought something Ben said to me a couple of weeks ago where I asked him about shaping, and he said that he got straight into it, and one of the boards that he shaped, he basically used straight away on the tour, and it was amazing for him. And I just thought, you know, when you listen to other stories about how people started surfing and how they started shaping, and the boards that they surf, shapes that absolutely sucked when they first started, I thought it was quite amazing, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, I'd love to say my first 10 were amazing, but they weren't. Shaping's hard, but computers make life a lot easier, but there's still so much to a board, the way it moves and the way it reacts to the waves canvas. Yeah, I just think it's never ending. Like, you know, you see, you know, I hope me and I hope Ben, were those old guys still tinkering away, you know, late 60s, still pottering about and getting the right tool for the job and all that. I don't know if Ben really touched on it. I'm sure he would have, but that thing where you know, someone sends you an email and they want a board and they tell you their weight and they give you the vagaries of their ability, and you're like, okay, cool. And you have a whole bunch of emails back and forth. And then they tell you that it's like altered their whole surfing world, like they love it. And you're like, no way, I was part of that. Like a little bit of me helped facilitate their love and make them feel like they've got a magic board. Pretty incredible. But like, I guess it's, you know, that's what I enjoyed about music, is that you can uplift people and make people feel good. And if you give someone a magic board, like the magic boards I've had off shapers over the years, you know, it's just so special. Like the magic ones are still in the rafters, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I know you're friends with Luke Young as well.
Yeah.
He shaped me a board, and yeah, it's pretty much what you just said there. I had a couple of conversations with it because, you know, we're quite friendly with each other, and I sent him some pictures and dems that I wanted, and he shaped this thing for me now that I've got in my car, and I'm absolutely frothing to get on it to give it a go. But he made like a really poignant comment. He said, even though he's really, really busy, because he does everything himself at the moment, which
I know.
Being a branded, he's quite a big brand in the UK, if I'm perfectly honest. He does everything himself, and people don't realise that. They probably think he's got like a production line. But he said something very poignant to me. He said that when he makes boards for people, he's making them happiness. And I thought that was like a really good way of putting something.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, Luke's awesome. Like, he was so lovely to me, and yeah, really talented shaper, lovely guy. Yeah, just really, really awesome. I loved getting to spend time with him. Didn't get to see him this last trip much because of everything that's going on, but yeah, he took me under his wing and let me hang out up there and shape, and just so knowledgeable. He can shape anything. So good.
Yeah, he's a quality guy. Mate, a couple of things just to finish off with you, because I know we've been on here for a while now. What does the future hold for you at the moment, and when are you coming back to the UK?
So at the moment, I'm thinking about September. I'm probably going to be coming back in September. I'm not sure how everything's going to go with you know. I think it's getting better in the UK with COVID. Australia's really strict as far as like a quarantine coming home, obviously. I don't know if I have to quarantine on the way over to the UK now or not, but I'll be back to the UK for at least 5 months every year. Yeah, which is going to be great. As far as where I'm at right now, just keep trying to expand as a shaper, tweak my own boards to make them, like, I've always got ideas in my mind of what's going to work. just slowly ironing through those to just make the boards I have better. That's the goal. Musically, I'm really excited by that. I want to do another album or 5. There's a lot there. So this day and age, I don't know, I guess just release them on Spotify or whatnot. It's a bit of a new world for me, that one. I'd like to do the odd pub gig if pubs open up again. I used to do a lot where it was just me and my guitar. Love that. It's a bit like, it's about as raw as it gets when it's just you and a guitar.
You need to get over here and do some gigs here too.
I would love to, mate. I really would. It's a funny one because it was a hard balance with the surfing early starts and the late nights of music, but I think that's changed now. I think you can do afternoon pub gigs, and you know what I mean? Like I just think that obviously right now things are all up in the air, but I think when things open up again, you know, I think those kind of beer garden, not to put it in the surf music box, but I am a surfer, I guess. So, but yeah, it'd be nice just to play with and for the people, you know, like that'd be really cool. Scary, been a long time. It's like just me myself playing to myself in a barn. Be nice to break out of that mold eventually. And yeah, like I was rapt that people were ordering boards when I was in the UK. That was really awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to coming back. Can't wait to hold my daughter. You know, never know, might be able to play gigs start of next year or something. Shape, surf Devon and Cornwall, and maybe go and see friends in Scotland and Wales. Who knows? You know, Ireland. Always wanted to go to Ireland. That'd be on the list. I've got some good friends there. I'd love to get there.
Nice. Yeah, I've not been to Ireland either. It's one of the few places in the UK I haven't been, and the northeast as well. I keep seeing lots of pictures being thrown up and video footage of the northeast, and it looks absolutely pumping. And yeah, but I'm a creature of habit, unfortunately.
Yeah, me too. But I think because the UK is so new to me, it'd be nice to obviously I got to balance it with daddy-daughter time. But you know, I would like to. It's hard for me to even say half the names, so that's why I've got to go there and check them out, you know?
Exactly, mate. What I'd like to do is just finish on a quick fire round, if that's all right. Quick fire round, and I like saying this, there is never a quick fire round. So, first question.
So, does that mean
go on.
Keep it short? Are you saying, so keep it short?
Hey, you do what you want. That's what I'm saying.
Cool.
So, first question is, if you could surf one fin setup for the rest of your life, would it be a single fin, twin fin, thruster, bonzer, or finless? I took 2+1 out because that was kind of cheating.
Damn. Single fin.
Favorite surfer and why? And you can't say your dad because that's cheating too.
Yeah. I'll go with Tom Curran just because I think he really bridged a lot of gaps between style and modern, and always has. He's kind of undefinable, like his surf style. It's a bit errorless, I think, personally.
Yeah, that's my personal one as well. First surf movie you ever watched?
I think it was The Endless Summer, the original one.
The last surf movie you've seen?
Incredible film. A mate of mine, Mick Waters, did it. If you get a chance to see it, it's just phenomenal. Called Outdated Children.
Oh, right, okay. I'll put that on the list. The last question then. Your dream surf trip?
I would do it all over again because it's just rehashing the dream surf trip I had with family for my sister's wedding in Sumba in Indonesia. She, being a goofy foot, would only get married on a left. Just around the corner, there was an amazing right that myself and her future husband, my little brother, and others got to surf. So if I could do it, if that was the dream trip, so I'd do that any day of the week again.
Mate, I feel you. I got married in Sri Lanka, but the waves sucked the whole time I was there, so I couldn't surf. I was gutted.
Oh, mate, that's a big one. Damn it.
Beau Young, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Pleasure.
And that's it. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and follow on your podcast provider, and maybe leave a little review on Apple Podcasts. Also, if you follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook, search for the Grumpy Surfer Podcast. Thanks for listening.